Hi, my name is Jerry. This is a video response on atheism. First of all, I'd like to say I appreciate, after listening to your video, your position. Although I know that I can't get your total perspective on how you came about to the decision that you came to, because obviously you've been alive for longer than you were a Jehovah's Witness, or since then. You were alive before then. Either way, I appreciate your position, and although don't necessarily agree with your position, I just like the opportunity to be able to share my perspective on the video in regards to the points that you made, not necessarily in the order in which you made them. The first thing I'd like to ask or respond to was your position on being an atheist in general and how you defined it. First, you defined it that you realized your definition was incorrect, but then you also stated at the same time that by being an atheist, you are not saying that a God or God doesn't exist, you just don't know. But a few sentences later, you said that you don't believe in God. So to me, that's a little bit confusing. Most of the time when a person takes a position, they've thought the position out and they take a particular stance unless they're persuaded otherwise through more evidence. The second point I'd like to talk about was the conversation that you mentioned in regards to design. Unfortunately, what a lot of us make the same mistake in regards to the complexity of design and all the different variations within the species and so forth, the beautiful sunsets, etc., 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 and the complexity. But in the context of a creator, it's rationally thought of that, well, if the creator is too complex to understand, then the creator itself must have had a creator. That's taking the presupposition that everything that is known and that can be known exists in the natural world. And within truth, in the biblical account, it says that God exists outside of the natural world. So in other words, there's a world which we see, and there's also a world which we cannot see. And that is the world or realm from which God himself comes from. So therefore, him being eternally God does not need to be created. The simplicity of the creator definition is completely logical. Unfortunately, it seems to be too simply logical for most intellectuals. For instance, if I look at the Eiffel Tower, how do I know there was a creator? Well, I see the Eiffel Tower. I don't know who the creator is, nor do I know that individual. I only know that there was a creator or designer of the Eiffel Tower because the Eiffel Tower exists. The same way I would say, how do I know your parents exist or existed at one time? Because you are the evidence. Thirdly, you mentioned morality. And then you mentioned morality in the sense of ethics and moral constants. But if you take the world view that everything began in the Big Bang, and that everything progressively evolved from simple cells, you'd have to ask yourself, at what point along the line did morality evolve itself? Because according to evolution, everything that exists on land, initially began in the water. So I have to ask you, how can you logically explain how a fish of any kind has morality? I'll take it one step further. If you take that into today's times, do sharks have morality? Do dogs have morality? Do cats have morality? So your argument for moral constants is okay in a society that has moral beings, but how did they become moral beings and the rest of the animal world remain unmoral? Not immoral, but unmoral. In other words, they don't have a conscience. They don't know right from wrong. They're not able to decide what is right and what is wrong. They survive and live off of instinct. So again, I would ask you to think about that in regards to morality. And you mentioned that you considered yourself to be a good person. Well, that would be fine according to your standard, maybe. See, in reality is, if you go out and break the law, if you get caught speeding, when you get stopped by the police, what they're going to see is that you've gone over the speed limit and that you've been fined accordingly. So whether you're generally speaking a good person most of the time or not proves that that argument does not stand up. For instance, let me ask you a question. Ask yourself this question. Have you ever told a lie? And if you have, be honest with yourself. What does that make you? Well, it makes you a liar. Ask yourself, have you ever stolen anything? And if you have, what does that make you? It makes you a thief. And let me ask you this. Jesus said, if you even look at a woman with lust, that sexual desire, that you've committed adultery with her already in your heart. The reason why I'm asking you these questions is if you answer these questions honestly according to the Ten Commandments, which is the standard that God uses to judge all mankind, not a separate standard for each individual making their own standard, because if I design my own standard, hey, I'm probably better than most people in the world. But the bottom line is, that's a faulty way to look at what is right and what is wrong. That's why we have laws. The laws that exist on the books, if you obey them, you're right. If you break them, you're wrong. If you obey them, you're not under the law. If you break them, you're under the consequence of the law. So finally, the last thing I'd like to address is your statement that you started out your whole video with. That you had been a member of the Jehovah's Witness. And I'll be honest with you, as soon as you mentioned you were a member of the Jehovah's Witness, that I knew from that minute, from that very moment, your perspective of God, the Bible, and Christianity were falsely represented and gave you a false picture of what is, because Jehovah's Witness is not a Christian faith. They changed the scriptures in the Bible to suit their own doctrine, and they preach another Jesus and another gospel. I would encourage you, if you really want to know the truth, to go to the original language in which the Bible was written in, Hebrew and Greek both, the original transcripts, and you look at the Bibles that were translated from that, especially into the English language, and you will discover that it's 99.9% accurate. The only difference is translation in certain words in American or English language do not exist in these other languages. But what you will find out that they have distorted the Bible, they misrepresented it, the true God of the Bible, they misrepresented Jesus Christ, and they misrepresent Christianity as a whole. With that, I'd just like to end and say I appreciate this opportunity again to share this.